I need a police officer. I'm being attacked. I'm being assaulted. Come get out of the ground. Get out of the ground now. Don't you out.
Sir, did I hear you say you have a gun?
Yes, I do. Man attacked me. I fired a shot.
Shots fired.
I'll put it to you this way. I'm not sorry that I shot him, but I am sorry that I had to.
Just after 9:30 this morning, Newtown Police received a 911 call for an emergency at the elementary school.
20 children murdered in Connecticut.
Some disturbing new details in a horrific shooting early this morning.
4 firefighters shot while responding to a call.
The authorities now say the shooter in this incident is dead.
With 9 weapons for every 10 citizens, America leads the Western world in guns, gun killings, and gun controversy.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics.
Bullets end the lives of 31,000 Americans a year. But the most polarizing killings are the ones that might be legally justified.
Tonight, the name Trayvon Martin echoes through the streets of Sanford and the halls of U.S. Congress. Community watchman George Zimmerman.
In February 2012, George Zimmerman shot teenager Trayvon Martin. His defense, a Florida law called Stand Your Ground, that touched on a trinity of controversy: guns, race, and the right to self-defense.
Zimmerman should have been arrested that night. You cannot defend yourself against a pack of Skittles and iced tea.
24 states have Stand Your Ground laws.
Okay, look, I'm gonna have to defend myself. I'm standing my ground here.
That's 155 million Americans covered by a concept that almost none of them really understand.
They're getting away.
That's all right. I don't want you going outside, Mr. Horn.
Well, here it goes, buddy. You hear the shotgun clicking, and I'm going.
In this episode of Vanguard, we talk to people who have pulled the trigger.
If you're going to carry, then you got to be ready, willing, and able to go all the way with it.
And families on the receiving end.
It made me question the justice system.
We meet the man who wrote the law.
Look, there is nothing in that statute that authorizes you to pursue, confront, or provoke another person.
And we hear from the cops who enforce it.
In my opinion, Stand Your Ground will allow a lot of guilty people to walk.
And those who think it should be repealed, as we travel to the center of the national storm over Stand Your Ground and the right to kill. Miami, January 2012. A thief was breaking into the car of 26-year-old Grayston Garcia.
Garcia had been notified somebody's breaking into your car. Comes down with a butcher knife, confronts the victim.
Irvins Ford was the detective on the case.
Victim takes off running. Grayston eventually catches up with him. And the part that's captured on video is the victim is actually running across the street. And in my opinion, and everybody else that saw the video out of my office, you could clearly see our victim look like he's given up, which is when Grayston actually stabbed him.
Stabbed him with the butcher knife?
With the knife.
The stabbing proved fatal. A witness ID'd Garcia, who at first denied involvement. But when confronted with this video, Garcia confessed. He was charged with second-degree murder and faced life in prison. It seemed like an open and shut case, but in court, there was a surprise.
The lead investigator was working for me at the time, Fabio Sanchez, called like, would you believe he's getting off on the Stand Your Ground? I'm like, no. It's not possible. It's a travesty of justice.
If he chased somebody and stabbed them, how did he get off?
If it was up to me, he would have been convicted and being punished for killing this victim. There's always been laws in the book to protect somebody that's defending himself. Now with Stand Your Ground, what it did, it expanded on it, but unfortunately expanded to the point where it protected the criminal.
Someone has to protect faith, family, freedom, and opportunity. I love freedom. I think if you empower people to stop violent acts from occurring, they can, they will.
Dennis Baxley is author of Florida's Stand Your Ground law. He's a Republican state representative who has been at the center of controversial causes for more than a decade, from the Terry Schiavo case to the 2000 election Florida recount. Baxley's Stand Your Ground bill became model legislation promoted across the country by ALEC, a de facto lobbying group and think tank made up of conservative state lawmakers and corporate sponsors.
Are we empowering people to take someone's life?
We are. We very much are. Look, there is nothing in that statute that authorizes you to pursue, confront, or provoke another person. It is very clear that this is narrowly written for a law-abiding citizen who's doing nothing unlawful, who becomes the victim of a violent perpetrator.
Baxley's bill was passed by the Florida legislature in 2005 by an overwhelming majority. His intent was to expand upon a right that has existed since the 17th century, the right to self-defense. The change is that before the law, people under threat in public were supposed to retreat. Stand Your Ground removed that requirement. Baxley defends his bill, but says he believes that some of the cases are a stretch.
There was one case story that we were presented with where this guy sees people breaking in his car or something. He goes and gets a knife and chases the guy down and stabs him to death. Well, how does he come under the protection of this statute? I'm very puzzled by that ruling and that interpretation.
What is it like for you to then see the case, get thrown out because of the Stand Your Ground law, or for somebody to get off because of Stand Your Ground?
It's almost as if, wait a minute, we don't stand a chance. In my opinion, Stand Your Ground will allow a lot of guilty people to walk.
And in all of your years as a homicide detective, how difficult does Stand Your Ground make it for you to do your job?
Extremely difficult. The way it is now, anybody could claim Stand Your Ground, and if they could articulate it properly, they could get away with murder.
There's a disparity in the application and interpretation of the Stand Your Ground law, who benefits and who don't. And from what I see, black people generally, don't benefit, or if you're poor, you understand, it's according to who you know.
My son did not deserve to die.
The killing of Trayvon Martin in 2012 sparked a national firestorm when the shooter claimed immunity under a Florida self-defense law called Stand Your Ground. At the time, we heard the Trayvon case was an anomaly, the exception to an otherwise good law. But in Florida, we found a number of cases in which Stand Your Ground seemed bizarrely applied. Cases where killers went free and people who appeared to be standing their ground went to prison.
And so what do you hope is accomplished by passing out this flyer here?
I hope that his story can be told and people can basically understand that things weren't done too fair. This is a picture of my son after he was attacked. He was never taken to the hospital.
Who took that picture?
The police took the police.
The picture is from the last night of Shivas People's life as a free man. According to court testimony, Shivas was in an argument at a nightclub when he was knocked to the ground and took a severe beating from 8 gang members.
My son was in fear for his life. He pulled a penknife off of his keychain, and I guess that's when the incident happened.
So while he was being attacked by several people, He pulled a knife off his keychain
Right.
and stabbed one of them in the abdomen.
Right.
Okay.
A man using a penknife to defend himself against a gang attack would seem like exactly the kind of case Stand Your Ground should cover. Although Grayston Garcia was able to use it successfully when he pursued and stabbed his victim with a butcher knife, for Chivas Peoples, it was never introduced as a defense. A jury convicted him of manslaughter without ever considering that his actions might have been justified under the law.
He was sentenced to 15 years for the manslaughter and 15 years for the weapon, the penknife.
So he got 30 years total?
He got 30 years total.
Wow. That's a long time. What was your reaction?
30 years, and especially when they were beating him, I can't understand that.
Why do you think Stand Your Ground law wasn't invoked as part of his defense?
It was probably just an oversight. The public defender caseload, she didn't give his case the time that's needed.
That's a pretty big oversight.
And that's what I'm saying. That's a pretty big oversight. That was ineffective assistance of counsel. My son was not the aggressor. He had a right to be where he was. He was not committing any illegal activity, so he should have fell up under the Stand Your Ground law. There's a disparity in the application and interpretation of the Stand Your Ground law, who benefits and who don't. And from what I see, black people generally don't benefit, or if you're poor. I want the judges, the prosecutor, and law enforcement to understand it, because basically it's obviously that they don't.
Deborah Peoples has launched a campaign to get her son a new trial. This time, he plans to invoke Stand Your Ground. Witnesses will tell a jury whether or not Chivas was really acting in self-defense and deserves to be freed. Although there are no comprehensive statistics on Stand Your Ground, one thing is certain. Since the law's passage in 2005, justifiable homicide has more than doubled in Florida. In some of the most troubling cases, there are no witnesses, and the Stand Your Ground defense becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Now, there's no surveillance video, so a lot of this can't be substantiated. There's no cooperating witnesses to tell investigators otherwise.
Former Detective Bill Waldron spent 9 years investigating murders in Florida. Waldron took us to the scene of a shooting between two convicted felons, Brayon Mitchell and Tavarius China Smith.
They were parked over in this area. The guy starts walking towards them. China Smith says to him, "Hey, are we good?" And the guy says, "Yeah, we're good." But allegedly, this other person pulls out a gun. China pulls out his gun, fires one shot, maybe fired a couple more shots.
Is that all happening here, you think?
It's all happening right in this area here.
Okay.
This parking lot is where Tavarius China Smith killed Brayon Mitchell. Unbelievably, 2 years earlier, he had shot and killed Mitchell's half-brother, claimed Stand Your Ground, and was not charged. For the second time, Tavarius China Smith invoked Stand Your Ground and was granted immunity. Art Brown was the prosecuting attorney on the case.
Now, was Tavarius Smith a criminal?
He was a criminal, and so he was charged by our office with possession of firearm by a convicted felon.
Because he wasn't supposed to even have a firearm.
Correct.
And yet he can kill somebody with that firearm and not go to prison?
Well, he could have gone to prison for the possession of firearm by a convicted felon,
Right.
but not for the homicide, because even a person who is a convicted felon has the right to use deadly force to meet deadly force. And in this case, the man was shot at. He was shot at several times. One has the right to defend himself under those circumstances.
And that's that.
And that's that.
I spoke to the assistant district attorney yesterday, and he clearly stated that everyone has a right to the law. This was clearly a case that he was fired upon and had the right to defend himself. That's that. Like, what do you think about that?
I disagree with it. The bottom line is both of these individuals are both convicted felons. Neither one is supposed to be in possession of a firearm. So not only did the state attorney's office say it's okay to kill someone, they basically gave him carte blanche to break the law and said it was okay. They therefore then have kind of established a precedence throughout the past several years that whether you're a convicted felon or not, whether or not you've been involved in criminal activity, if someone else allegedly pulls a gun on you first, you can kill them.
Wow.
All right, go.
If I had a gun on me and got robbed, I think it'd been a different situation.
Shoot to kill?
Yes. Yeah, no doubt. Full gun on my line. You're gonna die.
In 2012, the shooting of Trayvon Martin put a national spotlight on a Florida law called Stand Your Ground that is now in 24 states. But it turns out the Trayvon case was just the best known of hundreds of killings possibly justified under the law. Dig a little deeper into Stand Your Ground, and you find a culture of people ready, willing, and training to pull the trigger if necessary.
Shooting a gun is just another martial art. So you see people with clubs or knives or guns or nunchucks or something like that. It's just an extension of who you are.
Okay, everybody wonders why firearms instructors have these Spyderco knives. It's to help young athletes keep their shoulders forward. By God, it worked.
I traveled to South Carolina to meet Massad Ayoob. He's a champion marksman who has written more than a dozen books on shooting and runs a school that trains licensed gun owners when and how they can use deadly force in self-defense.
You'll hear the argument, well, we shouldn't allow Stand Your Ground because it makes the police's job more difficult and it makes the prosecutors more difficult. I submit to you that that is not true.
The defensive firearm to us is an emergency first responder tool that lets you cut a lane of safety for yourself and your loved ones until the designated professionals can get there to deal with it.
We joined one of Ayoob's classes. Many of our fellow students are studying for concealed carry permits, meaning they could carry a weapon in the grocery store, at a restaurant, on the bus, into the office, or almost anywhere their daily lives take them.
Draw your pistol. This will be 6 rounds only, slow fire. Ready? Fire.
Do you think everyone should have a gun in their house?
Basically, I want these things in the hands of responsible people. The people who come here are the people who've already made the decision that they want to be prepared for this type of crisis if it should ever befall their family.
I've been to Iraq twice and Afghanistan once. I've never had to shoot anybody.
It's one thing overseas and when you're in a war zone. It's another thing when you're in the U.S.
I was out walking my dog with my wife last year, and I heard 2 shots come from my neighborhood. I walked home with my wife and the dog, and the local corner store had just been robbed. And when the guy was running back toward his getaway car, he took a couple of shots at one of my neighbors who was standing on his porch watching. I was wearing a gun at the time. Had my dog walked been timed a little differently, I probably would have been in a gunfight.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Rapid fire, Chapman stance. Take the stance now. Ready? Fire.
I think I'm a pretty good shot for my first time, but you understand why you have to go through so much training to do this right.
Feedback.
I think there's a false sense people get the carry concealed permit and they think it stops there. That just says the sheriff says you're sane enough to carry a gun. Right. But you're not prepared for a situation, in my opinion. They talk about the legal aspect of it, but you need to go out and spend time and money and resources to train.
I don't know how much I need a gun day to day, but I've also heard my wife scream at 2 in the morning because someone out of their mind decided to come into the house.
Ayoob's classes go above and beyond state requirements. Safety comes first, shooting second. Shooting is always at targets. But the rise of Stand Your Ground has created a market for all sorts of training, including a class for people who want to know what it's like to have a human in their sights.
You will be engaging other people. We have some bad guys here today. You will be shooting people with the real guns.
The guns are real, but they've been modified to shoot simunition, a non-lethal marking cartridge similar to a paintball, used for decades by police and the military.
We're here because a lot of people, when we give them the gun and ask them to sight in on someone to pull the trigger, they don't do it. They have a problem with it. So hopefully we'll get you over that. Because if you can't pull the trigger, what's the point carrying the gun? Is there anybody that's here for a specific reason? Mommy got carjacked. Daddy got hit in the head with a bat.
I was robbed about a month ago at my apartment. Me and my wife was walking in, and we were about 250 feet from our front door. And 3 guys walked up behind us and pulled a 9mm out.
Students in the class ranged from a young man who had been robbed at gunpoint to an older woman who hadn't fired a weapon in almost 40 years. The simulation started out with basic skills like hitting a moving target, but quickly advanced to life-threatening situations.
Yo, you must have made a wrong turn off the freeway, homie. You're in the wrong neighborhood, bud. Get out of my town! Get out of my town!
As we progressed through the training, one thing became clear. When you draw your weapon in self-defense, what you see on the other end of the sights isn't a paper target.
Yo, don't move! Don't move! Don't move! And it suddenly feels a lot more real when there's a person coming towards you, as opposed to shooting a target. Is everyone here prepared to kill someone?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Here's a better question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, please.
Is everybody here prepared to protect themselves or their wife or their kid? That, just because you're shot, obviously you're not going to die. And there's
Right.
2 ways to look at it. Do you want to sit there and morally think that I'm just killing someone, or are you saving yourself?
Josh wanted to reenact the robbery he and his wife fell victim to. He wanted to see how he would have reacted if he'd had his gun on him that fateful night.
It's the first time me ever getting robbed. And as a man, I think when something like that happens, you kind of get, feel like less of a man, I guess, because you didn't quite protect like you need to, even though nobody got hurt.
So it was almost like you took a little bit of your manhood away by robbing you of something.
Yeah, don't move! Listen, give me your wallet! Don't move!
You got no kind of money?
That's all I got.
Come on, let's go.
Was that very similar to the scenario that you encountered, except for
yeah.
this time you were carrying a gun?
Yeah. It was pretty
And,
close.
and do you think that's very similar to how you would have reacted?
Yeah, if given the chance.
So it's kind of a situation that, like this gentleman said, you did escalate it. You know what? But then you were justified at that point. The shooting in the back thing's got to stop. But if he did turn around like he legitimately did that time and saw you with the gun now, well, he chose to make it a gunfight.
For Mary Ann, the training was a perfect opportunity to try her hand at concealing a weapon in her purse to see how she would react to a potential robbery.
Hey, give me your purse right now.
Back off.
Listen, I want your purse.
No.
Hey, tell your
Hey,
friend to get out of the way.
Look, don't shoot me. All I want is the money.
Okay, well, you can have the money, take the money, and go.
What have you taken away so far?
Not to always shoot.
Not to always shoot.
Because sometimes you don't have to do that. I've also learned that with the law in Florida, if I'm threatened, that I can shoot.
Hey, give me your purse!
I have to practice a whole lot more.
You think you'll come back here and shoot at live people?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
That depends.
And what about you? How did today go?
Went great. I expected just to sit down and just talk, and being able to get up and go around and shoot people, it was awesome.
How was it going through the scenario that you had previously been through?
It was pretty realistic.
That feeling of someone taking your manhood. How, that's very much still very real.
Oh yeah. I think if any guy gets robbed, even going here, if you're here every single day for the rest of your life, and it never happens again, you're still not going to get that back.
And would you still continue going after him?
Even after today? Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I had the opportunity to relive the situation and I had the gun and was able to shoot them and kill them, I'd have done it.
Even when their backs are turned?
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I'll be honest with you, I had contemplated firing 2 or 3 shots, which almost certainly would have killed him, but I'm like, I'm gonna try 1 shot. And if he stops, great. If not, we'll go from there.
I had traveled the country to see firsthand the controversy over a law called Stand Your Ground, made famous or infamous by the killing of Trayvon Martin in Florida. I'd met the legislator who wrote the law, police who were against it, and people training to use it. Now I headed to Iowa to meet a man whose story is often used by stand your ground proponents to explain why they believe the law is needed.
You shot someone.
Yes, I did.
That changed your life.
Yes, it did.
J. Rodney Lewis is a former IRS employee and law enforcement officer. On October 30th, 2011, he was coming home from work when he was in a car accident.
This big guy jumped out from behind the wheel of the Taurus. He had a pissed off look on his face and fists the size of cinder blocks. And he immediately ran over to my car and started punching on the window here.
And what were you thinking at that time?
I was like, damn, this guy's crazy. And then a couple of seconds later, a smaller guy got out and he came over and started pounding on my window too. And I had a pistol in my front pocket, and I'm like, man, it's time to haul it out.
Lewis got out of his car, pulled his gun, and called the police. This is the 911 call.
911. Get back! I'm gonna start shooting. Hello? I need a police officer at 1100 block of 11th Street in West Des Moines now. 11th Street. What's going on there? Well, I'm being assaulted, and I've been in an accident. Shut up! You! Get away from me!
Lewis took us back to the scene.
So I'm sitting there talking on the phone without 911, and I turned my back to him. And it almost turned out to be a grave mistake, because when I turned back around, there's the driver coming up on me and closing in fast.
Lewis retreated to a parking lot, but he says the attackers pursued.
And I'm thinking, they've got me in a rundown now. I know where this is going. They're gonna jump me, take my gun, probably shoot me with it. And I'm thinking, that's not happening. That's not happening tonight. And after I told the guy, it's the last call. I'm not bullshit. Don't you come any closer. He stopped. He took about a half turn counterclockwise, turned away from me. And then he spun back around and went, you mother, and he started to charge at me. And that's when I shot him.
Get away from me! What? Man just attacked me! I've been attacked! Please, sir. I need a police officer. I'm being attacked. I'm being assaulted. Sir, did I hear you say you have a gun? Yes, I do. Man attacked me. I fired a shot. Shots fired.
J. Rodney Lewis, a federal government employee used to being on the right side of the law, had shot a man. Police arrived a few minutes later. Despite the 911 call, despite the fact that Lewis had retreated, and despite evidence that Lewis had feared for his life, police arrested him. Lewis was charged with intimidation with a dangerous weapon, going armed with intent, and sent to jail.
Did you kill the guy?
He survived and testified against me at my trial. The story he told was the Mustang, in his opinion, deliberately rammed him. The cars came to a stop, and he jumped out to get my insurance information and see if I was okay. And the driver was this big black guy. He went crazy and started waving a gun around.
So what happened? How did this end?
Oh, well, this went in front of the jury, and the jury took 45 minutes to find me not guilty.
Not guilty. But he'd already spent nearly 4 months behind bars. He'd lost his job, was evicted from his home, and spent his life savings. Upon his release from jail, Lewis was homeless and for a period of time slept in his car. He's spent the last 2 years trying to recover.
When you shot him, you were intending to kill him.
I'll be honest with you, I had contemplated firing 2 or 3 shots, which almost certainly would have killed him, but I'm like, I'm gonna try 1 shot. And if he stops, great. If not, we'll go from there.
Do you wish you'd killed him?
Oh, that's a... Well, I'm gonna be frank with you. I got a feeling I'm gonna say yes because this guy demonstrated to me that he is a thug and a bully. And he had a long criminal history, including a history of criminal violence. And I think he's going to continue to escalate, and he's not going to stop until he kills somebody. And that's one regret I'll always have, is if some innocent person loses his or her life to this guy, and I could have stopped that. I'll put it to you this way. I'm not sorry that I shot him, but I am sorry that I had to.
Do you still carry a gun?
Yes. Yes, I do.
You're carrying now?
Yes, I'm carrying one now. This is the same gun.
This is the gun that you use.
It's the holster it's in.
Loaded?
Yes, it is. Let me, now it's empty.
So you always keep a round in the chamber?
Oh, yes. Yes. There you go. Take a look at it. It's a little 380. Yeah.
Had you ever shot anyone before?
No, never.
Had you only shot at targets?
Only shot at targets.
How did it feel when you're actually shooting a real person?
Well, it didn't bring me any joy. It was just something I had to do to keep on living.
Is there anything that can ever prepare you for that?
Probably not. If you're going to carry, then you got to be ready, willing, and able to go all the way with it. If you can't or won't, then you're right. You should not carry.
Are you prepared to shoot someone again?
If I have to.
You're prepared to kill them?
Prepared to stop them.
If we continue to believe and to allow people to believe that they have the right to go out into the street and shoot an unarmed stranger, what we'll be doing here is teaching people how to grieve.
What is your emergency?
Burglars breaking into a house next door. I've got a shotgun. Do you want me to stop them?
Nope, don't do that.
And the laws have been changed in this country since September the 1st, and you know it and I know it. I have a right to protect myself.
The right to protect oneself and family is as old as the law itself. But when does self-defense become vigilantism? This is a 911 call from 2007 in Pasadena, Texas. Joe Horn sees burglars breaking into his neighbor's house and calls the police.
But hurry up, man. Catch these guys, will you? Because I ain't going to let them go. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to let them go. I'm not going to let them get away with it.
Let me know if you see anything at all from where you're at. Don't go outside, okay?
Okay, he's coming out the window right now. I got to go, buddy. I'm sorry, but he's coming out the window.
Don't go out the door. Mr. Horn?
Texas's version of stand your ground is called the castle doctrine. It allows someone to shoot to kill while defending his home, or castle. In this case, Horn is defending his neighbor's castle.
I ain't letting them get away with this. They stole something. They got a bag of something. I'm doing it. They got a bag of loot.
That's all right. Property's not worth killing someone over.
I'm going outside. I'll find out.
No, I don't want you going outside, Mr. Horn.
Well, here it goes, buddy. You hear the shotgun clicking, and I'm going. Boom! You're dead! Get the law over here quick, man. Get one of them's in the front yard over there. He's down. The other one's run down the street. I had no choice. They came in the front yard with me, man. I had no choice. And they come right in my yard. I didn't know what the was going to do. I shot them, okay?
Did you shoot somebody, Mr. Horn?
Yes, I did.
Joe Horn killed the men he saw breaking into his neighbor's home.
Put that gun down. There's officers out there without uniforms on. Do not shoot anybody else. Do you understand me?
Horn was never charged in the shooting. When the case went before a Texas grand jury, it was dismissed. The jury decided that Joe Horn had acted within his rights. In Horn's case, there was a witness and a 911 call. Often, there's only the testimony of the one person left standing. That was the case in the shooting of Carlos Ibanez.
This is the killer's testimony. He was watching TV and he heard a noise and he felt that something is going on, and the first thing that he did was go into his room, pick up his gun.
Alvaro Ibanez's son Carlos was a Christian missionary. Preaching was his passion. According to witnesses, on the night of July 1st, 2009, he walked out of his apartment on a spiritual high, cartwheeling and in a manic state. He meant no harm, but he frightened 72-year-old Marcos Trujillo. What happened next is so painful to Ibanez's father, he's constantly reliving his son's last moments through his art.
And then he came back out of the room, out of his apartment, and saw my son in the middle of the street. I said, "Stop," and my son raised his hand. He said in his testimony, 2 shots in the air.
So he fired 2 shots first in the air.
And then my son came through, and he just said, "Stop," and shot him twice. That was the end of the story.
Did anybody see this?
No, the only witness was him.
So you think that he went after your son?
I seen the guy have his gun in his hand, and he feel powerful, and the law told him, go ahead. I feel that the law allowed that to happen.
So you feel the law basically was telling him, you've got the right to shoot this guy?
Yeah, I feel that the law tell not only him, but everybody.
Alvaro and his wife Denise are still processing their grief through their creative work.
At this point, my wife resumed what happened that night. We don't wake our daughter till just before the taxi comes. We seem to think as long as she sleeps, that her brother is still alive.
So she wasn't woken?
He was alive,
As long as she slept, she believed that he was still alive.
Yeah.
Because of Florida's Stand Your Ground laws, Trujillo wasn't charged in the shooting of Carlos Ibanez. Based on his testimony, both police and the district attorney determined that he felt threatened and was acting in self-defense.
So what was your reaction when you found out that the man who killed your son wasn't going to be charged?
It made me question the justice system.
How so?
I always thought that everyone had their day in court. I always believed that everyone had the opportunity to tell their story. And it was really disappointing to find out that that wasn't true.
The guy testified. They came over, interviewed him, and that was the end. Justified homicide.
And he's just one person. I'm sure there are more people who have been able to do the same thing, to just decide to walk out into the street and shoot an unarmed person. Our society is allowing more people to think, I have the right to kill someone who inconveniences me, or who makes me feel afraid, or doubt my safety. That's what our society is teaching people. Mr. Trujillo was a person who was a victim of that belief that led him to become a killer.
But were you planning on shooting him?
Yes.
And you have the right to do that?
To chase after him and kill him?
Yeah.
If they had the right to come towards me, then I have the right to go towards them.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Florida to understand the controversial Stand Your Ground law, which gained national attention in the wake of the Trayvon Martin shooting in 2012. What I found was a law intended to protect people who pulled the trigger in self-defense, but was seemingly misapplied in dozens of cases.
I get some very accusatory questions like, did you know that your bill's the reason this person died? And don't you feel bad about that? I'm not responsible for what an individual person decides that's right or wrong. What I am responsible for is good public policy. But I also think that there's some folks that have gotten coverage under this that were not entitled to it, nor the intent of it.
Critics of Stand Your Ground told me that it was widely misunderstood. As a case in point, They pointed to the Grayston Garcia case, where the police and judge had completely different views.
The interpretation from one judge could be different from the next. As in this case, the decision on her part was that he was defending himself, he was standing his ground, and of course that blew our mind.
We found citizens too had their own interpretations, sometimes grounded less in the law and more in haunting past experiences.
And you have the right to do that?
To chase after them and kill them?
Yeah.
If they have the right to come towards me, then I have the right to go towards them.
Mm-hmm. So that's the way you determine the threat, is you don't, even though they were fleeing, you don't know if maybe they'd turn around and come back.
Exactly.
So that's how you define a threat.
Yeah.
So you would have shot him.
Yes.
The law allows someone under threat to respond with deadly force. The gray area is what actually constitutes a threat, a concept so vast it has allowed convicted felons and drug dealers to successfully use stand your ground as a defense.
People like to believe that an innocent person can't be killed. And they'll do anything they can to convince themselves that that can't happen, that it's not possible. People need to understand that their own son or daughter could be the victim of this kind of crime. The world lost a great person when he was killed. A great artist, a wonderful father, a good son. It's a loss to all of us.
The Florida Stand Your Ground statute makes no mention of guns. Still, the heated conversation around the law almost always involves guns.
The gun is seen as an icon by either side. On one far end of the bell curve, you see the person who sees the gun as the icon of evil. You see people on the other end of the bell curve that think, okay, now I have a gun, now I'm safe, now the gun is my icon that will ward off evil. It's my good talisman. The damn things aren't talismans. They're literally power tools, and in essence, the tool becomes what the operator makes of it.
At its heart, Stand Your Ground was a bill designed to protect innocent people, to prevent the public from enduring the hardship that comes with defending yourself against a violent crime, from skyrocketing legal costs to having your reputation tarnished before proving your actions were justified. However, with 32 gun murders in the United States every day, perhaps Stand Your Ground inadvertently gives people, innocent or not, the right to kill when it no longer requires them to retreat, and instead empowers the use of deadly force outside the home. With a gun culture that currently divides our country, and the repeated mass shootings that seem to become progressively more shocking, is Stand Your Ground the kind of law that we need to feel safe, secure, and free?